Have you ever really stopped to think about how much of our planet is just farmland? Today we're going to dig into that exact question. And I think we're going to uncover some numbers that might completely flip how you see the world map. So, let's get right into it. All right, let's start with a question for you. When you picture, massive scale farming, what's the first country that pops into your head? Is it the huge plains of the United States? Maybe the farming heartlands of China or Brazil? Go on, take a second, lock in your guess. Which nation do you think dedicates the highest percentage of its land to agriculture? Okay, the answer is a staggering 80.8%. Just let that number sink in for a minute. We're talking more than 4/5 of an entire country's land mass is dedicated to farming. So, which country are we talking about? And that country is Saudi Arabia. Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that probably wasn't your first guess. The nation we all think of for its oil and deserts is actually, by percentage, the most agriculturally focused place on the planet. And a big reason for that is the huge areas they use for grazing livestock.
And look who else is right up there at the top. Right behind Saudi Arabia, you've got South Africa and the super densely populated nation of Bangladesh. It just goes to show you, it's not just one single thing. It can be a mix of, say, arid landscapes perfect for grazing, or intense population pressure that really pushes those numbers way up.
Okay, so we've seen the top of the list. Now, let's completely flip this around and check out the other extreme. Because when you compare the most and the least farmed nations, well, it tells a really fascinating story about our planet.
And here, you can really see that stark contrast perfectly. On one side, you've got the leaders we just talked about, but on the other, the countries with the least amount of farmland. And you start to see a pattern, right? Egypt is almost entirely desert. Norway is all mountains and icy tundra. And Singapore, well, it's a super dense city-state with basically no room left to spare.
So, okay, we've looked at the extremes, the real outliers. But what about those big global players? The countries we probably guessed at the beginning. Where do places like the US, China, and India actually fit into all this?
This is really interesting. India and China, wow, they use a huge chunk of their land for farming. We're talking 60 and 55%. The USA is right up there too at over 44%. But then you get to Brazil and Russia, and this is the fascinating part. We know they're agricultural giants when it comes to how much they produce. But because of the sheer scale of the Amazon rainforest in Brazil and the massive Siberian wilderness in Russia, their overall percentage is actually way lower.
So with all these different numbers flying around, from over 80% all the way down to less than 1, it can be kind of hard to get a feel for what's, normal. To do that, we need one single number to anchor us, the global average.
And here it is. The average for the entire planet, all the land, every country combined, comes out to 36.8%.
So let's put that another way. Globally, just over 1/3 of our planet's entire land surface is used for agriculture. That is the crucial benchmark. It's the balancing point that we can measure every single country against.
And this chart really just makes that comparison crystal clear, doesn't it? You can see Saudi Arabia just soaring above that world average, more than double. The USA sits a little bit above it, and then you see Russia, a truly vast nation, but way, way below that global benchmark for how much land it uses for farming. Okay, so we've got the numbers, we've made the comparisons, we know the average. But, the real power of data like this isn't just in the figures themselves. It's really about the bigger questions they make us ask.
Because it's so important to remember, these aren't just abstract percentages on a screen. Every single one of these percentage points represents millions and millions of square kilometers of our actual planet. And that physical reality, it forces us into a fundamental choice, doesn't it? Is that land for growing our food? Is it for building our cities and homes? Or is it land that we leave wild for nature? That's the constant balancing act that these numbers really represent.
And all of this brings us to a final thought. With our population growing, our climate changing, and all this new farming technology coming online, these percentages are not set in stone. Not at all. They're going to change. So the question I want to leave you with is this. What do you think these numbers are going to look like in 10, 20, or even 50 years from now? What will our planet's land actually be used for then?